I learned how to disappear long before I ever entered the Blood Palace. No one taught me. It was something you learned by watching what happened to people who were seen too clearly. You learned by noticing which servants were suddenly gone, which names stopped being spoken, which rooms were quietly reassigned. In this palace, attention was dangerous. Invisibility was safety. I kept my head down, my voice low, and my presence so small that even memory struggled to hold on to me. The palace itself encouraged that kind of silence. It was built from black stone that swallowed sound and light, its halls thick with shadow even when torches burned. Sometimes I felt like the walls were listening, like the floor remembered every footstep that crossed it. I had worked here for 3 years, long enough to know the safe routes and the dangerous ones, long enough to know when to move and when to stay still. I followed the rules because I wanted to live. That night, I was carrying a silver tray through the East Service corridor, my hands steady from long practice. On the tray were crystal goblets filled with dark wine, sealed letters stamped with royal wax, and a vial of blood tonic so dark it looked almost black. Everything on that tray belonged to one being alone. The king. King Ray's. I had never spoken to him. I had never looked at him directly. That was not fear. That was sense. Servants who caught the king's attention did not remain servants for long, and they rarely remained human. I had seen what happened to women who were chosen. They vanished into dark wings of the palace and were never spoken of again. I had no desire to be chosen. Tonight should have been no different. But when I reached the end of the corridor, I slowed without meaning to. The doors to the throne room were open, wide open. That never happened unless the king wanted to be seen, unless power needed witnesses. Servants were not meant to enter then. Cold air drifted out from the room carrying the faint scent of iron and smoke, and my stomach tightened with unease. I should have turned back. I knew that. I could have left the tray at the threshold and let someone else carry it in. That would have been the smart choice. Instead, I stepped forward. The throne room was vast and dim, its ceiling lost in darkness, its pillars stretching upward like black trees. Torches lined the walls, their flames low and restless, casting shadows that twisted across the stone floor. At the far end stood the obsidian throne, sharp-edged and severe, a seat that looked more like a weapon than a place of rest. And on it sat the Blood King. He was so still that for a moment I wondered if he was real. His pale body blended into the throne, his posture relaxed, one arm resting against the stone as if he had been carved there. His eyes appeared closed, his face calm and unreadable. He looked dead, but I knew better. I took another step inside and the doors behind me began to close, slow and deliberate. The sound echoed far too loudly in the silence. The moment the stone met stone, his eyes opened, red, not glowing, not burning, watching. The weight of his gaze hit me like a blow to the chest. My feet stopped moving, my body refused to obey me. I knew I should bow, I knew I should lower my eyes and kneel, but my knees locked, frozen as if the floor itself had claimed me. He stood. The movement was smooth and silent in a way that felt wrong, like the world had skipped a step. He stepped down from the throne, and with each step closer, the air grew heavier, pressing against my skin. My fingers tightened around the tray, my hands trembling despite my effort to steady them. He stopped in front of me. Too close. I could see his face clearly now, perfect, cold, still. He did not breathe. His chest did not rise. The torchlight refused to warm his skin. He smelled clean and sharp, like winter air and iron. Then he leaned slightly forward and inhaled. The sound was soft, but it tore through me all the same. My chest tightened painfully as if something deep inside me had been pulled too tight. My vision blurred. I felt a sudden terrifying sense of connection, like an invisible thread snapping into place between us. He froze. His jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. His eyes widened just a fraction, and that crack in his control frightened me more than any snarl could have. When he spoke, his voice was rough and broken, stripped of command. "Mate!" The word shattered everything. The tray slipped from my hands and crashed to the floor, silver ringing against stone as crystal shattered and dark liquid spread outward like spilled ink. My breath hitched violently, panic flooding my veins. "No," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was speaking to. For a heartbeat, he looked shocked. Then rage flickered across his face, followed by fear and something far more dangerous. His expression hardened as controls slammed back into place. "Leave," he commanded. The word cracked through the room like thunder. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. My feet struck stone hard as I fled the throne room, the sound of breaking glass and spilled wine echoing behind me. I didn't look back. My skirts tangled around my legs as I ran, my breath tearing from my chest, my heart pounding so violently it hurt. I heard guards shout behind me, voices sharp with confusion. "Stop! Servant!" I ignored them. No one touched me. No one dared. I tore through the palace, turning corners without thinking, relying on instinct and fear. I ducked into a narrow servants' passage and down a spiral stair, cold air slapping my face as my lungs burned. Behind me there were no footsteps, no pursuit. That terrified me more than if he had chased me openly. I could feel him anyway. Not behind me, but everywhere, like eyes pressed against my skin. The palace felt awake now, watching as I burst through the garden doors and into the night. Moonlight washed over the grounds, silver and cold. Gravel bit into my bare feet as I ran, thorns tearing at my ankles, my dress ripping as I pushed through hedges and rose bushes. I didn't stop until I reached the wall, climbing it with scraped hands and raw determination, falling hard on the other side before forcing myself to my feet and running straight into the forest. I tripped over a hidden root and fell, the breath knocked from my lungs as pain flashed behind my eyes. I pushed myself upright, desperate to keep moving, and froze. A massive shape emerged from the trees ahead, stepping into the moonlight with quiet power. A wolf, far larger than any I had ever seen. Its fur was dark, its eyes glowing gold as they fixed on me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The wolf took a step closer, then stopped. Its body went still, its head tilting as something unseen settled into place. The bond hit me like fire, sudden and violent, locking into my chest with terrifying certainty. The wolf lowered its head, not in attack but in claim. Behind me, the forest fell silent. The Blood King entered the trees. 2 predators had found me, and I knew with terrifying clarity that only one of them would ever let me run. I did not breathe when the wolf stood in front of me. I forgot how. My lungs burned, my chest ached, and yet my body refused to move, as if the night itself had wrapped its hands around me and told me to stay still. The wolf was massive, taller than my shoulders even on all fours, its fur dark as wet earth, its eyes glowing gold in the moonlight. It did not snarl, it did not bare its teeth, it simply stood there, solid and unmoving, like a wall placed between me and the world. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt something else settle into my bones. Warmth, not heat, not fire, but a deep, steady presence that pressed against my fear and held it back. My heart was still racing, my hands still shaking, but the panic that had been tearing me apart since I fled the palace slowed, as if something had wrapped itself around it and said, "Enough." The wolf's head lowered slightly, not in threat but in attention. I felt it then, sharp and sudden, like a door slamming shut inside my chest, a pull, a lock, a bond I did not understand but could not deny. This is real, I thought, and that thought scared me more than the wolf. Behind me, the forest went quiet, not peaceful, watchful, the kind of silence that comes right before something terrible happens. The birds were gone. The insects had stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I felt him before I heard him. The air shifted. Pressure built against my skin the same way it had in the throne room, heavy and cold. The warmth at my back tightened, becoming sharper, more alert. The wolf's muscles tensed beneath its fur. Then a voice cut through the dark. "Move away from her?" The sound of it made my stomach drop. King Ray's stepped into the clearing, his shape emerging from the shadows between the trees. He did not look like a man anymore. His posture was too still, his movements too precise. His eyes glowed faintly red now, catching the moonlight in a way they had not before. His fangs were visible, no longer hidden behind polite restraint. I felt the bond pull toward him, sharp and demanding, like a hook digging into my ribs. Mine, something inside me whispered. "No," I thought fiercely. "Not like that." the wolf growled, low and deep, the sound vibrating through the ground and up my legs. It shifted slightly, placing itself more firmly in front of me, its body blocking my view of the king without hesitation. That simple act did something to me. It made my throat tighten. It made my eyes burn. The king's gaze flicked down to the wolf, then back to me. His jaw clenched, anger flashing across his face. "She belongs to me," he said, his voice controlled but strained, like a blade held too tightly. The wolf snarled, teeth flashing white in the dark. "No," I said before I could stop myself. Both of them froze. The word echoed louder than it should have, hanging in the air between us. My voice shook, but I did not take it back. I stepped forward slightly, my hand brushing the wolf's fur as I did. It was thick and warm beneath my fingers, solid and real. "I don't belong to anyone," I said, forcing the words out. "Not like that." The king's eyes burned as they fixed on me. For a moment, something like pain crossed his face, raw and unguarded, before it vanished behind fury. "You don't understand what you are," he said. "What you mean?" "I understand what I ran from," I replied, my voice steadier now. "I understand cages. I understand being taken." His lips parted as if to speak, then closed again. He took a step forward. The wolf moved instantly, placing itself fully between us, its growl turning into a warning so deep it felt like it shook the trees. The king stopped short, his body rigid with restraint. "This is not your territory," he said coldly. The wolf did not respond with words. It didn't need to. The bond between us flared, sudden and intense, filling my chest with heat. Images flashed through my mind that were not mine. Forest paths, moonlit hunts, blood on leaves, a den, safety, belonging. The wolf was not just protecting me out of instinct. It had claimed me, and it would not give me up. The king sensed it. I saw it in the way his eyes widened slightly, in the way his breathing, unnatural as it was, grew harsher. "You imprinted," he said, the words sharp with disbelief. The wolf snarled again, louder this time, as if daring him to deny it. I staggered slightly, my hand pressing to my chest as the bond settled deeper. It felt permanent, heavy, not cruel, not forcing, but absolute in a way that made my knees weak. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The king did not look at me when he answered. "It means," he said slowly, "that the wolf has marked you as his. That bond is older than my kind, older than law." A chill ran through me. The wolf leaned back slightly, its head turning just enough for one gold eye to meet mine. There was no hunger there, no demand, just fierce attention. "Promise." I swallowed hard. "I didn't ask for this," I said. The wolf made a low sound, softer than before, almost a reassurance. "Neither did he," the king snapped, "and yet here we are." He took another step forward, his control slipping visibly now. The air thickened, pressing down on my shoulders. "Come to me," he said, his voice dropping, turning dangerous. "I can protect you." I laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "Like you protected me in the palace?" I asked. "By hiding me? By pretending I didn't exist?" His face twisted. "That was to keep you alive." "I was already dying," I said, just slowly. Silence fell between us, heavy and tense. The wolf shifted again, its tail flicking once, irritation clear even without words. I felt its impatience echo through the bond. It wanted to move, to take me away, to run. The king felt it too. "If you leave with him," he said, his voice low and shaking with barely contained rage, "you will never be safe. My enemies will hunt you. His enemies will hunt you. You will be a prize." "I already am," I replied. He flinched. For a long moment none of us moved. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting broken shadows across the clearing. My heart pounded, my legs trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Then the wolf made the decision for all of us. It turned sharply, nudging me with its shoulder, urging me toward the deeper forest. The bond pulsed with urgency. "Run!" I hesitated, looking back at the king. His eyes were locked on me, burning with something far more dangerous than anger. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You can't outrun what you are." "Watch me," I whispered. The wolf took off. The world blurred. Branches whipped past my face as I ran beside him, my feet barely touching the ground, as if the forest itself was carrying me forward. The wolf stayed close, always just ahead, guiding me through paths I couldn't see, through darkness that no longer felt empty. Behind us, I felt the king move, fast, relentless. The chase had begun, and I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever happened next would change everything. I did not know how long we ran. Time stopped meaning anything once my feet left the palace paths and the forest swallowed me whole. The wolf moved like the land itself was opening for him, slipping between trees and over roots without slowing, always just ahead of me, always close enough that I could feel him even when I couldn't see him. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but the bond between us kept pushing me forward, pouring strength into places that should have already given out. The forest no longer felt empty. It felt awake. Branches parted, stones shifted, shadows moved with us, not against us. I stumbled once, then again, but each time the wolf slowed just enough for me to catch myself, his presence firm and steady, never leaving me behind. I realized then that he wasn't just running with me. He was guiding me, leading me somewhere specific. The bond pulsed in my chest with every step, a steady rhythm that matched the wolf's movement. It wasn't loud or demanding, it didn't pull like a chain. It felt like a hand at my back, urging me forward, telling me I was not alone. That knowledge settled into me slowly, pushing against the fear that had lived in my bones for years. Behind us the night shifted. I felt the king again, cold, sharp, unyielding. He was not far. I could feel his presence like a pressure in the air, like the temperature dropping suddenly without warning. The forest reacted to him differently. Leaves trembled, animals fled. Even the wolf's body tightened, his movements growing sharper, more deliberate. "He's still coming," I said breathlessly, though I didn't know how I knew. The wolf didn't slow. A low sound rumbled in his chest, not fear but irritation, the kind that comes when something refuses to stop chasing what it cannot have. The bond flared briefly, and I felt his thoughts brush against mine, not in words but in instinct. Let him try. The thought startled me, not because it was violent but because it was calm, certain. The wolf was not running because he feared the king. He was running because he was choosing the ground where the fight would happen. The forest grew thicker. Trees clustered closer together, their branches forming a tangled ceiling that blocked out the moonlight. The ground dipped and rose sharply, the air growing cooler and damp. I smelled earth and moss and something else beneath it all, old stone. The wolf slowed suddenly and I nearly ran into him. He stopped at the edge of a clearing, his body low and alert. I followed his gaze. Stone rose from the earth ahead, broken and jagged, half buried beneath vines and roots. Ruins, old walls, a place long abandoned. The remains of something that had once been important. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The wolf glanced at me, one gold eye catching what little light filtered through the trees. The bond tightened and images slid into my mind. Not memories exactly. Feelings. History without words. Neutral ground. Old blood. A place where laws broke down. Before I could ask more, the forest behind us exploded with movement. The king arrived. He stepped into the clearing like he owned it, his presence bending the air around him. His eyes locked onto me instantly, relief and fury twisting together in a way that made my stomach drop. He looked different now. Less controlled, more exposed. The polished calm he wore in the palace was gone, stripped away by the hunt. "Enough," he said, his voice carrying easily through the clearing. "This ends now." The wolf moved in front of me without hesitation, his body tense, fur bristling along his spine. The bond flared hot, and I felt his readiness sink into me like a second heartbeat. He was not afraid. He was waiting. "You should not have followed us," I said, though my hands shook at my sides. The king's gaze flicked to me, then back to the wolf. "You don't know what you've bound yourself to," he said. "He will ruin you." The wolf snarled, a deep warning sound that echoed off the stone ruins. "And you wouldn't?" I shot back. "You were ready to cage me the moment you decided I mattered." His jaw tightened. "I was trying to protect you." "By deciding for me," I replied. "By claiming me, without asking." The king took a step forward. The wolf lunged. The movement was so fast I barely saw it. One moment the wolf was still, the next he was a blur of muscle and teeth, slamming into the king with a force that cracked stone beneath them. The sound of impact rang through the clearing, sharp and violent. I staggered back, heart hammering, as the two predators collided. The king recovered instantly, moving with inhuman speed, his claws flashing as he struck. The wolf twisted away, his body bending and rolling, teeth snapping as he went for the king's throat. They moved like living weapons, too fast to track, their fight tearing through the clearing, stones shattering and trees splintering under the force of their blows. I felt it all. Every strike, every snarl, every burst of rage and restraint. The bond pulled me into the wolf's instincts, flooding me with sensations that weren't mine. The smell of blood, the thrill of the fight, the unbreakable certainty that I was worth defending. The king slammed the wolf into a broken wall, stone exploding outward. He pinned him there, fangs bared, eyes blazing red. "She is mine," he growled. "You will release her." The wolf snapped at him, teeth grazing the king's jaw, drawing a thin line of dark blood. The bond flared painfully, and I gasped, clutching my chest. "No!" I shouted. "Stop!" They froze. The king's head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with shock. "You felt that?" he said slowly. "Yes," I whispered. "I feel him." The wolf stilled beneath the king's grip, his body tense but unmoving, his gaze fixed on mine. The bond pulsed between us, strong and undeniable. The king released him and stepped back, his expression unreadable. "You are bound," he said. "Truly bound." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I didn't choose it," I said, "but I won't deny it." Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by the sound of my breathing and the distant rustle of the forest. The wolf moved back to my side, pressing close enough that I could feel the heat of him against my leg. His presence steadied me. The king looked between us, something dark and dangerous, settling into his gaze. "This changes nothing," he said. "You cannot have her. Your kind and mine have never shared." "Then maybe that's the problem," I said quietly. His eyes hardened. "This will mean war." The words settled heavy in the air. The wolf lifted his head and howled, the sound rolling through the forest like thunder, answering calls rising in the distance. Not one voice. Many. I felt them through the bond. A pack. They were coming. The king's gaze flicked to the trees as shadows began to move beyond the clearing. "So," he said softly, a cruel smile touching his lips, "you've chosen your side." I met his gaze, my fear burning away into something stronger. I chose myself. The forest answered with sound, and I knew there was no going back. The howl did not sound like a warning, it sounded like an answer. It rolled through the forest in layers, deep and wild, echoing off the trees and stone ruins until the night itself seemed to bend around it. I felt it hit my chest before my ears truly caught up, a vibration that settled into my bones and stayed there. The sound was not fear or rage. It was a call, a declaration, a line being drawn. The wolf beside me lifted his head fully now, his chest expanding as if the sound had poured strength directly into him. His body no longer felt tense in the way it had before. He felt ready, grounded, certain. Through the bond, I sensed his calm spreading outward, a steady confidence that pushed back against the chaos that had ruled my thoughts since I fled the palace. The Blood King felt it too. I saw it in the way his posture shifted, in the way his eyes flicked toward the dark edges of the clearing. He did not step back. He did not retreat. But something sharp and calculating settled into his expression, replacing raw fury with cold awareness. "They come quickly," he said. His voice was even, but I heard the edge beneath it. The wolf let out a low sound, not quite a growl, not quite a laugh. It vibrated through his chest and into my legs where I stood beside him. "They were close," I said, though again I didn't know how I knew. The knowledge simply existed inside me, as natural as breath. They were always close. Shadows moved between the trees. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The forest was thick with darkness, and fear had a way of shaping shadows into monsters, but then the movement became clearer. Shapes stepped forward, one by one, slipping out of the night as quietly as falling leaves. Wolves. Not one, Not two, many. They formed a loose circle around the clearing, staying just beyond the broken stones, their bodies large and powerful, their eyes glowing in shades of gold and amber. Some were darker than the night. Others were pale, their fur catching what little moonlight remained. Every one of them watched me. I should have panicked, I should have screamed. Instead, I felt something strange bloom in my chest. Recognition. The bond stretched outward, thin threads reaching from me to them, faint but real. They felt it too. I saw it in the way their ears flicked toward me, in the way their heads tilted as they studied my face rather than my blood. The wolf beside me stepped forward half a pace. "This is my mate," he said. The words did not come through my ears. They came through the bond, clear, certain, unquestionable. A murmur rippled through the pack, a low sound of acknowledgement that passed from wolf to wolf. Not challenge, not doubt, acceptance. The Blood King's lips parted slightly. He laughed once, short and sharp. "So it's true," he said. "You've bound yourself to her completely." The wolf did not look at him. "Yes." That single word carried more weight than any speech. The king's gaze returned to me. His eyes were no longer burning with rage. They were cold now, measuring, dangerous in a different way. "You don't know what you've done," he said quietly. "You've stepped into a war that predates you by centuries." I met his gaze, my hands clenched at my sides. "I didn't start this," I said. "I just stopped running from it." For a moment I thought he might argue, demand, command. That was what kings did. Instead, he exhaled slowly. "You were safer in my shadow," he said. I shook my head. I was disappearing there. Something flickered across his face then. Regret, sharp and sudden, like a wound reopening. The wolf beside me shifted closer, his shoulder brushing my leg. The contact was grounding. Real. He was not hiding me. He was not pulling me back. He was standing with me, letting the world see. The pack moved closer, not threatening, not crowding, present. One of them stepped forward, larger than the others, her fur silvered with age, her gaze sharp and intelligent. She did not look at the king at all. Her attention stayed on me. "You ran far for a human," she said. This time I heard the words. They settled directly into my mind, clear as speech. "I had to," I replied. "I didn't have anywhere else to go." Her eyes softened just a fraction. "You do now." The simplicity of it nearly broke me. I swallowed hard. The Blood King straightened, reclaiming his height and presence, though he no longer dominated the space the way he once had. The pack held the clearing now. This was their ground. "I will not forget this," he said, his voice carrying easily. "Nor will my kind." "Neither will ours," the silver wolf replied calmly. The king's gaze returned to me one last time. "This bond will cost you," he said. "Both of you." "Everything costs something," I said. "At least this one lets me breathe." For a long moment he simply looked at me. Then he stepped back, into the shadows. The forest seemed to exhale as his presence withdrew, the cold pressure lifting from the air little by little until I could finally draw a full breath without pain. He did not disappear. He retreated, and that distinction mattered. When he was gone, the clearing felt different, warmer, louder, alive again. The pack closed in slightly, not trapping me but enclosing me in a way that felt protective rather than threatening. The wolf beside me finally relaxed. I felt it instantly. My legs gave out. I sank to the ground before I could stop myself, exhaustion crashing over me all at once now that the danger had passed. Strong warmth pressed against my side as the wolf lowered himself beside me, his body solid and steady. I leaned into him without thinking, my fingers curling into his fur. "You should rest," the silver wolf said. The bond took hold fast. "It will drain you." I nodded weakly. "Who are you?" I asked. "I am Mara," she replied. "I lead this pack." I glanced around at the wolves watching us. "And him?" I asked softly. She followed my gaze to the wolf at my side. "That," she said, "is Ash." The name settled into me like it had always been there. Ash. He nudged me gently, his head lowering until his forehead rested against my shoulder. The bond flared warmly, and I felt his relief, his satisfaction that I was safe, that I was still here. "I didn't know this could happen," I whispered. I didn't know humans could. They rarely do, Mara said, and never without consequence. I let out a shaky breath. Figures. A few of the wolves shifted, some sitting, others lying down, creating a quiet circle around us. The forest resumed its sounds slowly, cautiously, as if testing whether it was safe to breathe again. What happens now? I asked. Mara studied me for a long moment before answering. Now, she said, you come with us. I stiffened slightly. To where? To our lands. To our den. You cannot return to the palace, and you cannot stay here. Her gaze sharpened. The Vampire King will not leave this unanswered. I know, I said. He never does. Ash lifted his head at that, his attention snapping back to me. You are afraid, the Bond whispered. Yes, I admitted silently, but not of you. Good. That single word wrapped around me like a promise. We travelled through the forest as dawn began to creep into the sky, pale light filtering through the trees in thin strands. I rode on Ash's back when my legs refused to carry me any farther, my hands gripping his fur as if he might vanish if I let go. The pack moved around us with ease, silent and watchful, always aware of their surroundings. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. By the time we reached their den, the sun was rising fully, casting golden light over a valley hidden deep within the forest. Stone and earth formed natural shelters along the cliffside, and the air smelled of pine, soil, and life. This place felt ancient, not ruined, not decayed, alive. I slid down from Ash's back, my legs trembling as they caught my weight. He stayed close, never leaving my side, as Mara guided me into a sheltered space lined with firs and smooth stone. You will stay here, she said, until your strength returns. And after? I asked. She met my gaze. After, she said, we see what the world demands of us. I lay back, exhaustion pulling me under despite the 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. Ash curled around me, his body a solid wall of warmth and protection. The bond hummed steadily, not overwhelming, not demanding, just present. As sleep claimed me, one final thought surfaced, clear and sharp. I had stopped running, but the war had only just begun. I woke to silence. Not the sharp, waiting silence of the palace, where every quiet moment felt like it was holding its breath for violence. This silence was different. It was full, alive, the kind that came from wind moving through trees and distant birds greeting the morning without fear. For a moment I didn't remember where I was. Then warmth pressed against my back, solid, steady. Ash. He was curled around me, his body a barrier and a shelter at the same time. His breathing was slow, deep, even. I felt it through the bond, the calm rolling off him in quiet waves, grounding me before my thoughts could scatter. I lay still, letting that calm sink into me, letting my body remember that it was safe, or at least safer than it had been. You're awake, the bond whispered. Yes, I thought back. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't, he replied. I always know. That should have scared me. Instead, it felt right. I sat up slowly, careful not to disturb him too much, and looked around the den. Morning light spilled in through the opening, painting the stone walls gold. The pack was already awake. Some wolves rested nearby, others moved quietly at the edge of the clearing beyond, alert but calm. This place felt lived in, not hidden. It did not feel like a cage. Mara stood near the entrance, watching the forest with sharp, patient eyes. They will come today, she said without turning. The Vampire King does not wait long once he decides. My stomach tightened, but I nodded. I had known this moment would come. There had never been any illusion that running would end things. It had only changed where the fight would happen. I won't hide, I said. Not again. Mara turned to look at me then, studying my face as if she were weighing something ancient and important. Good, she said. Neither will we. The pack gathered as the sun climbed higher, the air growing tense but focused, like a breath held not in fear but in preparation. Ash stayed at my side the entire time, his presence steady through the bond. I felt his readiness, not frantic or wild, but controlled. He was not a creature driven only by instinct. He chose when to unleash it. When the forest darkened suddenly, I felt the king before I saw him. Cold slid across my skin, sharp and unnatural, the warmth of the morning recoiling as if offended by his presence. The trees stilled. The birds vanished. The pack shifted instantly, forming a loose line in front of me, not blocking my view but making their stance clear. King Ray's stepped into the clearing. He was not alone. Shadows moved behind him, resolving into figures with pale faces and burning eyes. Vampires, courtiers, enforcers. His power made the air feel thinner, harder to breathe. "This ends now," he said, his voice carrying easily. "You will come with me." His eyes locked onto mine, and for a heartbeat I felt the old pull, the bond he had sensed first, the dangerous gravity of his attention. "No," I said. The word came easily. Ash growled low beside me, not in challenge, but in agreement. The king's gaze flicked to him, then back to me, frustration tightening his expression. "You belong to a world you do not understand," he said. "This bond will destroy you. Wolves burn bright and die. I offer eternity." I stepped forward. "I don't want eternity if it means disappearing," I said. "I don't want protection that erases me. I don't want to be owned." A murmur passed through the vampires behind him. The king raised a hand, silencing them. "You think this is choice?" he said softly. "But power always decides in the end." "Then listen carefully," I replied, "because this is my decision." The bond flared as Ash moved with me, not ahead, not behind, but beside me, equal, present, seen. "I choose him," I said, "not because he claimed me, but because he stands with me. I choose this life, this bond, this place." The king stared at me, something breaking open in his eyes. Not rage this time. Loss. "You will regret this," he said quietly. "Maybe," I admitted, "but it will be my regret." For a long moment no one moved. Then the king laughed. It was not cruel, it was tired. "So be it," he said, "but know this. Peace ends today." Mara stepped forward then, her voice calm and unwavering. "Peace does not end," she said. "It changes." The forest answered her words, not with violence, with presence. The pack howled together, a sound that rolled outward across the land, carrying intent, warning, and unity. The vampires shifted uneasily. They were powerful, yes, but they were not welcome here. This was not a place they ruled. The king looked around, finally understanding what he faced. A choice. War. Or restraint. Slowly, he lowered his hand. "This territory is yours," he said at last. "For now. But the bond you carry will echo. Others will come." "I know," I said. He met my gaze one final time. "You are no longer invisible," he said. "That will cost you more than you think." "I'm ready," I replied. He nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then he turned away. The cold receded with him, the forest breathing again as the vampires vanished into shadow. No blood spilled, no final strike. But something irreversible had happened all the same. A line had been drawn. When they were gone, my legs finally gave out. Ash caught me instantly, his body solid against mine as I leaned into him, exhaustion washing over me in waves. Relief followed close behind, fierce and overwhelming. "It's done," he thought. "No," I said softly, resting my forehead against his. "It started." He didn't deny it. The pack closed in around us, not in celebration, but in quiet acknowledgement. I felt it then, fully and clearly, the shift inside me. I was no longer running between worlds. I had chosen one. I was not a servant, not a secret, not a prize. I was bound, yes, but by choice, not fear. As the sun dipped low and the forest filled with light and sound, I knew the future would not be easy. There would be blood, there would be loss, there would be war, but I would face it standing, seen, and never again alone. The moment you are chosen, do you disappear or become something new? Like, comment and subscribe for the next gem.